Hello and welcome back to Cop Shrink and reading to you The Knight in the Rusty Armor. This is the final chapter, and I'll be honest, I'm a little sad to be done with this book. I hope that you've liked it, and let's just get into it. Chapter 7 is called The Summit of Truth. Inch by inch and hand over hand, the knight climbed, his fingers bleeding from holding on to the sharp rocks. Finally, just as he was almost to the top, he found his path blocked by a huge boulder. On it was a chiseled, final inscription. Though this universe I own, I possess not a thing, for I cannot know the unknown if to the known I cling. The knight was discouraged, feeling that he was too exhausted to overcome this final hurdle. It seemed impossible to cling to the side of the mountain and decipher the meaning of the inscription at the same time. Squirrel and Rebecca were tempted to offer the knight sympathy, but they refrained, remembering Merlin's counsel that sympathy can weaken a human being. The knight took a deep breath, which somewhat cleared his head. He read again the last part of the inscription aloud. For I cannot know the unknown if to the known I cling. He considered some of the knowns to which he had been clinging. There was his identity, who he thought he was and who he thought he wasn't. There were his beliefs, those he thought were true and those he thought were false. And there were his judgments, things he thought were bad and things he thought were good. Then he had a horrifying thought. The rock to which he was clinging for dear life was also known to him. Did that mean that he would have to let go and fall into the unknown of the abyss? You've got it, knight, said Sam. You have to let go. What are you trying to do? Kill both of us? Asked the knight. We're dying right now, said Sam. Look at you. You're so thin they could slip you under a door. You're full of stress and fear. I'm not nearly as afraid as I used to be, said the knight. If that's the case, then let go and trust, said Sam. Trust who? Retorted the knight hotly. He wanted no more of Sam's philosophy. Not who, it, said Sam. It? Asked the knight. Yes, said Sam, it. Life, the force, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. The knight peered back. The knight peered back downward over his shoulder at the apparently bottomless chasm below him. Let go, Sam whispered urgently. The knight realized that he had no choice. He was losing strength by the moment, and blood was now spurting from his fingers where he was clutching the rock. So, believing that he was going to die, he let go and plunged down into the infinite depth of his memories. He recalled all the things in his life for which he blamed his mother, his father, his teachers, his wife, his son, and his friends. And he fell deeper into the void. He let go of all the judgments he had made against them. Faster and faster, he plunged into the abyss, giddy as his mind descended into his heart. Then, for the first time, he saw his life clearly, without judgment and without prejudice. And in that instant, he accepted full responsibility for his life, the influence that people had on it, and the events that shaped it. From this point on, he would no longer blame his mistakes and tribulations on anyone or anything outside himself. And this recognition that he was the cause and not the effect gave him a new feeling of power. He was now unafraid. As an unfamiliar sense of calm overtook him, a strange thing happened. He began to fall upward. Yes, impossible as it seemed, he was falling back up out of the abyss. Yet as he felt upward, he still felt connected to the deepest part of it, in fact, to the very center of the earth. So he continued to fall higher and higher, knowing he was connected both to heaven and earth. Then suddenly he was no longer falling, but found himself standing on top of the mountain, knowing the full meaning of the inscription on the rock. He had let go of all that he had feared and of all he had known and possessed. His willingness to embrace the unknown had set him free. Now, the universe was truly his to experience and to enjoy. The knight stood on the mountaintop, breathing deeply and growing dizzy from the joy of seeing, hearing, and feeling the universe all about him. For he now saw a clarity that was breathtaking. An overwhelming sense of well-being swept through him. Before, the unknown had filled him with fear. Now he was brimming with love for himself, for Juliet and Christopher, for life, and for the whole wondrous world around him. The knight dropped to his knees as tears of gratitude poured from his eyes. I almost died from tears left uncried, he thought. Thus the tears continued to pour down his cheeks, running down his beard and onto his chest plate, because they came from his heart. The tears had extraordinary heat, which quickly melted the last of the armor. The knight cried out with joy. No more would he don his armor and ride off in all directions to prove he was good, kind, and loving. No more would people see the shining reflection of steel and think the sun was rising or setting in the east or the north. The knight smiled through his tears, unaware that a beautiful, bright light now shone from him, a light brighter and more beautiful than his armor at its polished best, sparkling like the clearest brook, shining like the moon, dazzling like the sun. For indeed, the knight was the brook. He was the moon. He was the sun. He could be all these things at once now and more, because he was one with the universe. He was love. Instead of the end, it's the beginning.